All right, I had to restart the live for some reason. I am not sure what happened. I am going to post this live in on my Facebook page. I'm really not sure what happened, why the sound was not working. So I'm going to post this and I hope that you will in fact be able to join. All right, let me see. Nicola, please announce that I'm in fact posting a new live. All right, so let's go to Facebook and let us post. All right. All right, so welcome again to Legally Speaking with attorney Antoinette Osbourne. This program is for information purposes only. If you need legal advice, you can contact me, Antoinette Osbourne, at 718 502 9137. During the live, you can text your question. You can call in. I think we should be good right now with the sound. I am not sure what happened on the last live, but the sound was just not available. So we're starting a new live. You can feel free to text your question. You can post your question. Let's see, Nicola is saying all good. Yeah, everyone is hearing now. All right, so we are in fact going to be looking at, for people who are coming through the border, where they're coming on a visa or they are being paroled in, you're being inspected by CBP. For those of you who are just joining and who were not part of the earlier live, we focused on CBP ports where you're leaving from the country of departure and there's CBP already there. So by the time you, in fact, arrive in the United States, you're not going through CBP again. If you leave from Bahamas, Bermuda, Canada, Ireland, the UAE, then you would have from that country spoken to someone at CBP. They would have provided the necessary clearance for you to enter the United States. So, what you'd find is people who are, in fact, coming from these countries, when they reach the United States, they have already been cleared. So they're not going through CBP again. So if you're just tuning in, welcome. I apologize for the first live. The sound was just not working. So we have restarted the live. Don't forget to like the live. Don't forget to share the live. For my radio listeners, we are going to be on another station very shortly. It won't be a legal program, it will be like a community based program. If you have the radio, you are only going to hear it on your radio in the Bronx and Westchester. For everyone else, you will have to download the app, but I will give you information on this as I progress to get this settled. All right, so if you have a question during the live this morning, you are more than welcome to call in. And the number to call in is 718 502 9137. And if you do not wish to call in, you can also post your question in the live. You can text your question to the same number, 718 502 9137. 837. So for people who actually have to go through CBP in the United States, let's focus on what is it that you're going to be encountering when you depart the plane and now you're coming to immigration section and now you're going to be speaking to an immigration officer, what it is that you are in fact going to be asked. All right, hold on one second. So someone texted a question. Let me address that person's question for them. They say, I have a question for you. I applied for my mom's green card. She got through. The temporary visa given to her expired before she migrated to America. What should I do? I'm sorry, I don't know if you answered my question because there was no sound. No, I'm just actually seeing that question, so I'm just going to answer it. Um, hmm. And here's your difficulty: her visa expired. Unless they're really extenuating circumstances, they are not going to extend that visa, and you are going to unfortunately have to reapply. Usually, they would give sometimes 6 months to leave, and I think that's ample time to leave. I'm not sure why it is that she did not leave in that time. But if the embassy finds that she doesn't have extenuating circumstances to extend that visa, then that's it. You're actually going to end up reapplying for your mom. So please don't forget to share the live. Please don't forget to like the live as well. All right. So Sunshine was saying that she could not hear. And I think this is for the prior live and not this live. I think we're all on the same page in this live, and hopefully everyone is in fact hearing. All right. So the person who enters on the visa or even at the port of entry outside of the United States where CBP do have their designated spots, such as I stated before: Bermuda, Bahamas, UAE, Ireland, Canada. For these places, no matter where you're entering from, once there is customs, border, and patrol, you are going to get questioned. And the whole purpose is to make sure that you are, in fact, coming for the purpose and you're not a threat to national security. So you go up, you have your passport from the country you're coming from. They're looking at the citizenship. It's a question for you to, declare your citizenship. Oftentimes, your passport speaks to the country of your citizenship. Then we're next moving to the purpose of your travel. So your visa is an indicator as to what is the purpose of your travel. So if being questioned as to why is it that you are in fact entering the United States, you are giving an answer that is in fact inconsistent with your visa, what will happen? Often you'll be placed into secondary, and when I say secondary inspection, and you will see that they are in fact typing your response. Having typed your response, if it is that you're coming for a purpose that is in fact inconsistent with the visa, what will happen is they will cancel your visa and send you back from where you came. Yeah. So this is what will happen, where you may even give an answer that is consistent with your visa. But what they have determined is when you go to that counter, your entire travel history comes up. So the officer is able to see your prior travel. They look to see what was your length of stay. They look for, of course, any overstays. Now, if it is that you bought your ticket for just 2 weeks, but on your prior trips, they saw that you, in fact, stayed possibly like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, this for them is an indication that you have been working. And oftentimes, when taken into secondary, you will be questioned. And some people, in fact, admit that they were working. But if the Custom Border and Patrol officer believes that your prior trips, you were in fact working, what you'll find is they will cancel the visa, and often you'll get an exclusion order. So the officer is not just bound by your testimony as to what you're in fact saying was or is the purpose of your trip. If it is that it is clear that every time you come, you stay for an extended period, they view this as if when you came, you were in fact engaging in unauthorized employment, right? And when questioned, you'll be asked if you received any compensation, if you worked, where did you work, how long did you work for? These are questions that will be asked because it gives the ability for the officer to determine whether or not you're in fact coming for a purpose other than what your visa has in fact provided, right? It's inconsistent. So you declare your citizenship. You're questioned as to your purpose. And stated before, your citizenship is mainly through the passport that you present, right? If the officer believes that you're not being truthful concerning your citizenship, then what you'll find is, in fact, a further investigation will be done to determine whether or not the passport that you are in fact traveling on is fraudulent, right? Or if the passport is not fraudulent, but in fact it can be determined that it is a genuinely issued passport, but you're traveling on someone else's papers, then you're going to be taken into secondary. You're going to be questioned because obviously there is misrepresentation at the time of entry. For those of you who are in fact traveling on a passport or a visa other than your own, as if you have been permitted entry. So let's take a scenario where you're traveling on someone else's visa or you're traveling on someone else's passport, as long as it is not a US passport. And let's say you are able to sneak in on that passport. If you are in states like New York and Connecticut, we treat this as an entry and you being admitted. The issue for you is going to be whether or not you're admissible if you're looking to adjust status in the United States. So definitely for New York treats this as an entry. And having entered, you can now apply if you qualify for an adjustment of status. So let's take a scenario here. You came on your friend's passport, not a US passport, any passport other than a US passport. You came on your friend's passport. It was not discovered. and later on you met someone in the United States and you got married. You got married to a US citizen. Now it is that they are looking to adjust your status. So what you would do is you'd apply for the adjustment. Now at the interview, because there was fraud or misrepresentation and at the time of entry, in that you pretended to be someone you are not, and you traveled on documents that does not belong to you. So we have here, you're submitting documentation and you are presenting yourself to be this person. When you go into your interview, this is where you're going to be questioned, because, and they get very detailed in the question. And the reason for this is, especially if this is a passport that is used numerous times, the focus is to get the person who is allowing people to travel on this passport. So you are going to be questioned thoroughly, right? And this is the same if you were able to get a provisional waiver and you went outside the country and you are doing your interview at the embassy to ultimately get that green card. When this is the case, you're going to be questioned, because what they're trying to do is to be able to clamp down on these sort of entries and to find the mastermind behind this, right? So in focusing on the purpose of the travel, it is whether or not you're going to be traveling consistent with the visa. So let's say you came on an entertainer's visa, and when questioned, you don't know where the event is going to be at. You don't know who is the sponsor of the event. You do not know where the show is. This is an indication of fraud, because if it is that you have a promoter that has booked you to come to participate in an entertainment event and you don't know the details of this event, you'll be taken into secondary. And if you can't prove that you're really a participant in this event, then the visa is going to get canceled and you can be excluded, right? So prior to boarding that plane, prior to speaking to CBP, one of your main focus should be, when questioned, what is your legitimate reason of entering? And it must be consistent with your visa. So for someone entering on a visitor's visa, if you are coming and you are telling the officer anything that indicates that you are in fact going to work, and the officer is not just bound by your testimony, if they take your cell phone and in your chat history there are negotiations concerning the fact that you're going to start a job, when you're going to start, where, obviously you're coming for employment purposes. And if this is discovered, your visa is going to be canceled. You're going to be excluded. Often this is the result of a secondary inspection where it is discovered you're coming for a purpose other than your visa. Earlier, when I spoke about you entering on a passport other than a US passport, the danger of entering on a US passport after September 30th, 1996, is that you have permanently blocked yourself from ever getting a green card. The people who qualify for a waiver for this often are US citizens. You know, you made this representation before your 16th birthday, and both your parents are US citizens. Oftentimes, you are going to be a US citizen. That's the exemption. So you traveling on a US passport, or back in the day when you could travel on the birth certificates, that's a false representation. And you're not just limited to that. if you use that passport in order to get any form of whether immigration benefit, state benefit, you go and you purport. And this is why I always encourage people, be very careful when you're filling out. I know for New York, when filling out that driver's license application, there is in fact a portion on that document that will enroll you it registers you to vote. And people are just mindlessly filling out that form. But in filling out that form, if you fill out that section and you unconsciously go ahead and you register to vote, you're in fact affirming that you are a US citizen. And the danger with that is that it blocks the green card, right? And if you are a green card holder and you in fact make this representation, it now blocks you from citizenship. And they have in fact changed the adjustment of status forms. On this form, they're actually even asking if you have ever represented yourself to be a US citizen. And the purpose for this is any false claim to citizenship permanently makes you ineligible for citizenship. And if it is that you're permanently ineligible for citizenship, you are never eligible for the green card. And this is why, as immigrants, we have to be careful, and where I warn of the danger of, in fact, going to these village lawyers, right? So I have a client where she just went down, and she went down on the provisional waiver, right? And of course, her entire family is terrified, because when you come to this country at 5 years old, this is the only place that you know as home, you have considered to be home. And certain family members were, in fact, now getting involved, and they were encouraging her not to go to her interview. And I'm a very blunt person. I'm a very straightforward person. You've been in this country for over 30 years. Let's get real. And we have to be practical. Anyone who is in this country for 30 years plus, even not even going to extend to the depth of that time limit, but you've been here for a significant time without paperwork, you are in fact restricted in a lot of things that you can do. Whether or not your husband is a US citizen, that's not you. You don't have that status, right? And certain things she could not get involved with because she didn't have papers. And I said to her, I just need you to trust me right now. And she said, Antoinette, we've come this far. She's gonna go. And she's now back in the United States, green card. So I'm very fearful of the village lawyers. I'm very fearful where they give you the wrong advice. I'm very fearful of them where they put in applications for people and it causes persons to end up in removal proceedings. So I'm terrified of them, right? Because had she listened to those family members, she would have been here. Well, but for the new order that Biden did, right? Prior to that, there was no way out. There was absolutely no way out other than applying for this waiver, going down, doing your interview, and returning, right? Someone who has an absolutely clean background, this is not an issue for you, yeah? People who should be terrified of doing this is possibly you had a criminal record back from your country, You didn't disclose this, but now when you have to go and get your police record in your own country, this is gonna come up, right? Or there was some fraud at the embassy which you had not disclosed to your attorney, right? People are here now. The new Biden executive order is not gonna come into play after USCIS have submitted the necessary thing through the Federal Registry. They have been very detailed concerning their requirements. They have, in fact, determined whether or not there is a new form that they are going to put forth. No one knows if there are going to be any additional fees for this. So just be very careful as to the people you, in fact, take guidance from in your immigration applications. It can result in dire consequences for people, right? And I had a client where I think I discussed this with you before. This was her fourth husband. And some people trying to try again. I do not knock anybody when it comes to love. Someone's timing and finding the right person for them. No one has control over that. And if someone has married numerous times but it did not work out, I do not discount anyone's ability to go ahead and try again. But to immigration, where you in fact are coming to them on numerous occasions, you look like you're in the business of giving green cards. And we had gone into the interview, and for me personally, I like officers who are just straight shooters. They're not into the BS. They're gonna look at the evidence and see whether or not you qualify. If you qualify, you qualify, and if you don't qualify, you don't qualify. So of course, having gone in the first time without an attorney, and now she is scheduled for a Stokes. She and her husband is like, what's going on? She's like, I finally find somebody that treats me well. And now I'm being accused that my marriage is not real. So having taken a look at her application, she didn't have copies of the application, but in terms of what her conveyance to me as to what she sent in, the file was shit. And with the past history of 3 marriages, and this is your 4th marriage, you don't look good. And any officer who has his worth is really going to believe that you are in the business of giving people papers. So she came to me and we organized her file to show that this is in fact a real marriage. And this is where sometimes legal guidance is so important in your applications. And I remember the officer said to her, I can see you have legal counsel in your case now. Your file is completely different, right? And, I'm happy to report that she got her card, right? It was a frustrating process because if them send her nice, good, at the one time now she will come on where things are work out for anybody who has had failed relationships. When you go through frogs, I know you finally have a prince, but then immigration appears to be that wall that's blocking you from your prince. You have to fight. Yeah. For anybody who ever pick up crosses in life and it did not work out, and you finally have met someone that you can build life with, of course you're gonna fight for the relationship, you know. And her husband was such a you can't see say she not gonna have no certain man, you just know you're not gonna have no problem with them. Them are no drunk crow, them are no waste man, them are no rat bait. She can build life with him, right? And this was the very purpose of filing for paperwork so you can keep your house together. And so happy to report that her case is approved. There's nothing frustrating as when you filed your application and you meet in a roadblock. Yeah. I've had people that have come and it's clear I can't take the case because there's no bona fide to it. And people think this application process is really so simple. It is not. All right. So Nicola is saying that Amarildo has a question. Okay. So Amarildo says, my friend did his medical and interview, but the medical was not ready at the time of the interview. What should he do now? Okay. If he's in Jamaica, of course, he's going to be scheduled to Andrews, right? At this point, me have Andrews as a little crisis place. And the reason I say this is my client was advised his medical because they're so backlogged. And I'm not going to harp on this like I did on a prior live, but they're so backlogged. The medicals are in reality coming in after your interview, right? And this is because I think you in fact, your notice of the interview comes like 3 or 4 weeks before. And that goes to show how Andrew's book, if this is Jamaica. If it's another country, of course, he would have scheduled his medical and the embassy receives the medical once the hospital is able to put everything together. And when you check on the case, it may say refused. And this is because they have not yet received all the documentation. The case is not denied. They are, in fact, still processing. So what I would do if it is Jamaica and it might deal with Crosses Andrews Hospital, Memorial Hospital, I saw the hospital name. If he's dealing with them, I would ensure, having done my medical, check back like a week later and verify that they did in fact send over the medical. Them are Crosses. I'm gonna hold my tongue on that because my client, like I said, was told it was sent over, and the people, the man sit down 2 months. I said, no, 60 days past now. Something going on. The people them never send over a medical. So right now, I'm not trust them. And I encourage all my clients, go back and ensure that your medical has in fact been sent over. So once they have in fact sent over the medical, the embassy will start processing the case again. And once everything is approved, then he would, of course, have registered with the courier service. He gets his notification. He may get a call to go and pick up the passport, right? But it's like everything on hold. The people them don't have all the documentation, so they can't approve, right? All right. So Nicholas says Novlet has a question. Novlet is saying, my stepson has been in this country since he was 5. He came up illegally. He is now 30 plus. Will he qualify under the new Biden immigration law? All right. Here's the thing with regards to stepchildren. For immigration, you have to qualify as a child. When you are over 21, you qualify as a son or a daughter. Now, for stepchildren to qualify, the immigrant would have, of course, have to had married the US citizen before that child's 18th birthday. In addition, the application, once he has parole, has to go in before the child's 21st birthday. The rules, the main underlying rules have not changed. The whole purpose of the Biden executive order is to allow people who would have qualified for the requirements of an adjustment of status, but who don't have proof of their entry, to be able to get parole. So the fact that he is 30 years old, he's not a child, and he would not qualify. If he had been married to a US citizen before June 17th, then he would be in a different position, because he could have applied for parole, and this is when the guidelines and forms have been issued by USCIS. Then he would have been able to apply. But he does not qualify. He's 30 years old. He's not considered a child. So you, as a US citizen parent, would not be able to let him get parole to adjust his status. Remember, the ultimate aim of this parole is to facilitate an adjustment of status so the people can pick up in the United States. The rules for the adjustment of status has not changed, right? So when you get the parole, the underlying rules are still the same. That parole just gave people who, let's say, quote unquote, cross the border to be able to get that parole so they could adjust. You still have to qualify for the adjustment of status. This child does not. He's 30 years old. All right. So just tuning in, you're listening to Legally Speaking with attorney Antoinette Osbourne. I'm going to go a little bit later this morning as a result of me coming late and as a result of the catastrophe with the first live, right? All right. So what can I tell you? When you're driving through at the border, the officer is looking at the passengers. He's looking in the car. He's looking at compartments. Half the time you'll find this with Canada and Mexico, right? And he's looking to see, what's the people purpose for coming over, checking their citizenship. Are they really citizens of the countries that they purport that they are in fact coming from? These are issues. Are they in fact coming for the purpose that they have disclosed? This is the reason why they are entering the country. Because putting forth these questions, sometimes this is where the officer is able to determine that your story don't make sense. Yeah. For example, you say I'll come visit, and you're coming to your auntie. Yet when them go in your suitcase, them find wedding dress, ring, everything that clearly indicates that you're coming to marry, and you never disclose this. This is now inconsistent, where obviously you're coming for another purpose. You're coming to get married. And the officer at his discretion can now look to exclude you and cancel your visa, right? All right. Once you have been admitted, right? You're coming on your visa, you pass everything, you are allowed in. You have now spoken to immigration, you've entered. But anyone coming through the airports, no, you can't speak to immigration. And whilst you're leaving, having spoken to immigration, you can get stopped by CBP, right? So you will see that you've left immigration, and yet still there are some officers where you have your luggage. They can stop you, take you into secondary. They can ask you to open your suitcase, look through your suitcase, question you to see, so you've already done the first questioning via the officer at where you see the sign immigration, blah, blah, blah. You've left them, you're going for your bag, you're going into baggage claim. There are still officers out there who are looking and observing. They can, in fact, call you. They can question you to see whether or not you're truly admissible. So at this point, having even passed immigration, I can't just say you're not safe till you come out of the airport. Yeah. All right. Now, if you've been denied entry, if you have not been given the option to withdraw your application, and I would encourage anyone, if you have that option, try to avoid getting your visa canceled. Just withdraw your application, right? One of the most dangerous, and I think it is such a power that they have, where people, if they fall into this category, dog name your supper. So for those of you who are tuning in or listening in, please don't forget to like the live. Please don't forget to share the live, right? So we have 35 people here and we have 3 likes. Wow. I didn't know how so many of the haterade people come in to listen and get the information. As long as you get the information and you use it in a positive thing, I have no issue. If the officer has reason to believe that you are in fact a drug trafficker, this is the worst classing you can ever get. Yeah? Permanently block you. Right? When you are applying at the embassy and there is a delay in documentation, for example, there may be a delay in tax returns for your people who are in fact going to the embassy and they are going to complete the process for that green card, ensure that they have their tax transcript for the most recent tax year. So if tax season has concluded as it is now, your family members should be going with your 2023 tax transcript, not the tax return, because you have people who will have tax returns issued, but it has not been filed with the IRS. And as a result of which, the embassy asks for a tax transcript. If it is that the person has not filed, then they should be able to show that they are on an extension, right? So there are certain things that will hold up the case at the embassy. If it is that you are especially going on a marriage-based interview and your spouse has not provided the original divorce document, whatever position you're applying for, especially these marriage-based interview, to enter into a marriage, you have to be a single person. Single person, whether you've never married before, or you are divorced, or you have been widowed. If it is that you fall into the category where you are a divorcee or your spouse has died, you must have the original death certificate or the original divorce judgment, right? And for those of you who are in jurisdictions that deal with decree nices and decree absolute, the absolute is what terminates a marriage, not a nisi, right? I know for Jamaica, we give 6 weeks, 6 weeks reconciliation period. Your watch to see, because some people do get back. They file for their divorce, and within that 6 week period after the NISA has been issued, they go ahead and they terminate proceedings because they want to work on the marriage, they want to stay married. And this is why, for people who are in fact considering divorce, I don't think anyone should divorce unless possibly trying to work things out first. You ever have a friend where they break up with a boyfriend and then a few months down the line they are back again, then break up again, and they're back together again? This is a concept I don't understand. Because my sentiments is, if you have broken up with somebody, that's the end of it. There's no, I know for me in my personal life, there's no getting back together. We've broken up, it's over. But some people will break up, and I think this is why some people are kind of hesitant in dating people with children, because it's always them a flex with them baby mother, right? So they're a little bit hesitant. So you have people in life will always get back together. And for jurisdictions who do the nice side / absolute, they're giving you the possibility to reconcile during the nice side to absolute period. So you have that option where you can just terminate proceedings, and you have people who do it. I have had clients who have, New York is not a nice absolute. We just go straight to the point, thank God. You're getting a straight divorce. However, prior to the judge signing off on that judgment of divorce and it being entered, you can stop that divorce proceedings once you have come together and you've both agreed that you are in fact terminating the proceedings. However, one person, I had a client, she was like in literal tears because she said, he will never divorce me. He will never divorce me. New York just needs one person to say that the marriage has broken down under sworn testimony. They don't have again a reason, nothing. The marriage has broken down. So gone are the days where, and this, I think we started this October 16, 2010. I think that was a date. I don't know why that date's in my head, but I think that's the date that we were allowed to do the no fault. And your marriage is broken down for 6 months or more. Before, it was just like ridiculously hard to get a divorce. And what people were mainly filing on is the fact that you've been separated for a year, or we used to call it constructive abandonment, where the person refused to have sex with you for a year. So that in fact qualified you for a divorce, right? But it was so tough, because for the person who was really being a devil's advocate and you filed on constructive abandonment, and I'm referring to that whole period where we're just struggling with the default divorces and how the no fault has come to save us. So where it is that the person was claiming constructive abandonment in that their partner was refusing to have sex with them for a year. So now it is that they qualified. So I'll tell you what your wicked partner would do, right? They would go ahead and, in fact, have sex with you after you filed to try and mess up the whole thing. Crazy, right? Yeah. But this was what would happen to people. And we in New York, we just had to move to a no fault. I just think it's ridiculous where you want a divorce, you qualify for a divorce, the other person does not want a divorce, and they make your life a living hell. There are billions of people on earth, and you're telling me if you're with someone who doesn't want to be with you, you are going to put them in a position where you're in fact actually forcing them to remain with you. Who does that? Why would you even do that? you know I don't think no one is so irreplaceable that you can't find someone else. And I used to have an aunt, and she would just amaze me. Like, I think she broke up with a person from, like, when they were in college, right? And she would she would just talk about this person consistently. And I'm thinking, my God, this is years now. How do you remember someone for so long? You ask somebody like me can't remember your last name. Me's a serious girl. Me not understand them sort of this memory and remembrance. But some people, in fact, they hold on. And it's sad. And they want to hold on to you and to force you in a marriage. And I think one of the things now why people are becoming so fearful is that there is a man-made gender switch. And sometimes people are remaining not because they want to be with you. It's because nothing else, no better out of street. So they remain in these very unhappy situations. But personally, peace of mind is priceless. Yeah, I mean, I care. But I mean, to each his own. You know, different people can focus or relax in an environment where they're suffering, and they will stay that in that place for years, just in fact existing. They're frustrated, they're tired, but they're not going to leave. And that's just the reality of it. So it could be, it's not because they want to stay with you. Some people will not divorce you because they're terrified of dividing up their pensions. They are terrified of losing their assets. So as a result of which, they are they have restricted themselves. This is the life they're going to continue in, right? They don't want to stay, but it's too costly to leave. You ever hear the saying, it's cheaper to keep her? You'd be surprised the amount of people who they are in fact forced into this sort of lifestyle. They don't want to divide up the assets. And I think for people who are taking up married people, I think it's such a curse. I don't understand what blessing you think you're gonna get from that. A lot of these people are not going to be leaving their spouses because they're not losing out on their monies. You know, what can I tell you? To each his own. You date who you want to date. Am I your mother? Hey, all right. So coming in on your visa, I want you to be mindful of your whole purpose at the time of entry. Make sure it is consistent. For those of you who are in fact looking to change your status or extend your status, you have to get this application in before the time on your I-94 expires. And for anyone who wants to pull their I-94, you can go to cbp.gov, Google I-94 retrieval and CBP. You get to the page, put in your passport information. You are in fact able to see how long you have been accorded to stay in the United States. Having seen this and you want to extend your status, you want to change your status, your application must be in before the deadline on your I-94. Otherwise, it's going to be rejected. One of the dangers in overstaying and leaving is when you go to the embassy, that officer at the embassy, they are so not going to issue you that visa when you're applying. Because let's say you left and you look to come back on the visa, but the officer that you're speaking to sees that you have in fact overstayed, whether it is overstaying for a day, 2 days, they're canceling your visa on your entry and you have to go back to the embassy and apply for the visa. Problem is when you go back to the embassy and you apply for the visa, the embassy sees that you have overstayed, they're not issuing you a visa. So now you're looking to apply for this quote unquote waiver. You know, I know of one client who told me that an officer said, well, you overstayed, you're not going to get back this visa. Oh boy, it is what it is. You know, you really need to apply for a waiver in those circumstances, because you go back to the embassy, you are a threat of an overstay. All right. So for those of you who are just tuning in, we started late this morning, so I'm trying to give the full hour, right? All right. So you overstay, you go back to the embassy, you're doing your application, it comes up on the screen that you overstay. What happens in reality? In reality, the officer does not issue you another visa. You're going to need to apply for a waiver. And this is the same thing for people who came upon their visitor's visa and they have been deemed to have misrepresented themselves because they have been found to have worked in the United States. So no, you need to apply for a waiver so that you can in fact go ahead and reapply for your visitor's visa. But you're still at that officer's discretion as to whether or not, even having gotten the waiver, whether or not you qualify for the visa. Yeah. So I want everyone to understand that the visa is just like a license. It is your permission to apply for admission. The fact that you have a visa does not give you an automatic admission to the United States. You have to go through immigration. They are the ones who provide you with admission. You have people with 10-year visa, them don't get admitted because possibly the officer thought that what they're coming to the United States for is inconsistent with the visa that they hold. So the fact that you have a 10-year visa, you'll ask people, well, how long were you permitted to stay? 10 years now. What is on your I-94? Or what is stamped in your passport? People think that because they have a 10-year visa, they have 10 years to stay in the United States. No, it's just that you have the right for that 10-year period, unless your visa has been canceled or revoked, to apply to enter. That's all it is. It gives you the ability to apply to come in to the United States. It is not your license to live in the United States for 10 years. All right. If you have applied for a change of status, haven't gotten the visa now, you pass through CBP, you go through immigration, and here it is, you'd like to extend your status or you'd like to change to another visa. In this case, you have to do an application to USCIS, and not every application that is submitted is going to get approved. All right. So you apply for the extension or you apply for the change. During this time, you're not accruing unlawful presence. If your application is in fact denied, then now it is that you start accruing unlawful presence, right? So you have to make a determination now that for most people, they're just going to leave. The application was denied. If you left prior to getting a determination on your application, then you're fine. You may get that approval after you've left. It's not an issue, right? But what I do find is for people, when they do these applications and it has in fact been granted, the problem is the approval comes in after the time they have extended you to stay. Isn't that the most ridiculous thing? Yeah? So by the time you get this extension, you have now overstayed. It's crazy. All right. So we have concluded the hour. You have been listening to Legally Speaking with attorney Antoinette Osbourne. If you wish to make an appointment during the week, the number to call is 718-502-9137. That's the number you would call, or you would text to make an appointment during the week. We're coming up to July 4th, and I'm just encouraging everyone, watch your alcohol intake, especially if you're a green card holder, you haven't applied for citizenship. The DUIs does affect your ability to get citizenship, right? So I'm encouraging you, watch your alcohol intake. It is not a good look, right? I think I see that. Let me see if I can see this before I, in fact, sign off. Bear with me 1 second. I see as if someone has a question or a comment, and I'm gonna try and take a look at it. And let me turn this down so my own voice doesn't come into the live. Let's see. I see, and I'd like to get to it because sometimes I will sign off and realize that a comment has been made, and I think I just clicked on the old live, but let me see something here. Bear with me, because by the following week I so do not remember to go back over your question. So I try to get it during the actual active live. All right, so let's see if I can get it. I've turned down the volume, trying to get to that comment or question. And of course, my phone is taking freaking forever. Hold on 1 second. All right, so, okay. All right, Novlet, right. I know I saw. I'm visually challenged. I can't see so things that are close, but sorry, things that are far. So Novlet, I can see you said, Novlet is asking, I came to Canada. Before I read Novlet, thank you, Pauline. Better late than never. Thank you, good, nice, clean, Pauline. All right, let us go back to Novlet. Novlet says, I came to Canada on my mother's passport, have a work permit, working as a nurse. Was told I had to return to Barbados on my green card. Can I do an adjustment of status? Novlet, if you're in Canada, I'm not licensed in Canada. I can't advise you on that unless you're saying you came through Canada on your mother's passport. I'm gonna change that question as if you came to the United States. I can only advise you as if you come to the United States. Can't advise you. Not licensed in Canada. I know nothing about their immigration system. But if you had come to the United States, right, on your mother's passport, you say you have a work permit, you are working as a nurse. I'm not sure how you even got that work permit, because was told I had to return to Barbados. For people who do not have proof of their entry, yeah, um, you actually have to seek a provisional waiver. Here's the danger for people who are coming on people's passport. If this is, in fact, a US passport, and a US passport was used after September 30th, 1996 to enter the United States, you're permanently ineligible for a green card, right? If this is in fact disclosed that you came on a US passport, I don't think USCIS would even approve that provisional waiver. If it is a Jamaican passport and you were in fact provided some sort of admission, or the people who you came with, you can show, for example, you may have receipts where you bought receipts in Canada prior to immediately crossing the border, and you're in the United States and you probably bought something, you have that receipt and you have affidavits from people who came in the car with you, then you could look to apply for an adjustment of status if you can prove it. And this is the thing with a lot of people, they can't prove their entry. Time has passed. They do not keep documents, and as a result of which they have no proof. But when you enter the United States on someone else's passport, as long as it's not a US passport, if you have been inspected under that passport, then you would be able to provide proof of your admission. The only issue is because of the misrepresentation, you are going to require a waiver. But if you're in New York, you can adjust your status, right? Okay. Novelet is saying someone came in at the age of 4 years old. I'm not following. They came on their mother's passport through Canada when they were 4 years old. I'm not sure if at that time, I don't know how long that entry is, if at that time they're allowing minors to travel on their parents' passport, and if in fact your mother was inspected, then coming through the border, it would have stated that you are there as a derivative. As long as you can show that you entered with her, right? And you were in fact inspected, then you would have proof of your entry. And if the officer weighs you in, you'd have proof of your entry. The problem is to get proof of the entry. I'm not sure how it was done at the time of your entry. The only thing I can tell you is if there is some documentation that can show that you entered at the same time with your mother, then yeah, you have an entry. You were in fact inspected. You were with your mom. Your mom spoke to someone. They have her being admitted. If you can prove that, then you would be able to do an adjustment. The question is the proof, and I'm not sure in terms of at the time you entered what they were doing. So one of the things that could be done is to get your mother's records at the time of entry, and also look to apply for yours and see if there's any indication that you were with your mom at the time of entry, provided of course she herself was inspected and admitted. Then you would ride on that coattail and prove that you were in fact inspected and admitted, and it would allow for an adjustment. If you cannot provide proof, then unfortunately you are going to have to get the provisional waiver. But the question is, who is filing for you. If it is that it is a spouse that is filing and your spouse is a US citizen, then you would be one of the beneficiaries under the new Biden executive order. If it is that it's your spouse who is filing for you, if it is your mom who is filing for you, then no, you would not benefit under the Biden executive order because that is relegated to spouses and stepchildren of US citizens. But you know what is in fact sad is that I think they should have extended this order to all immediate relatives of US citizens so as to include parents. They should have done that. And the reason being is having gotten the parole as a parent, you would be able to adjust. But it was not extended to parents. It was just extended to stepchildren and also to spouses. And I think that is such a travesty because parents of US citizens are eligible to adjust their status in the United States. But for those parents who snuck through the border, they're now in a position that they still have to seek a provisional waiver in order to move forward. All right, so we are duly at the end of the program. You've been listening to Legally Speaking with attorney Antoinette Osbourne. To make an appointment, you can call 718-502-9137. I will, in fact, keep you posted concerning that new community program that I and will be embarking on in a few weeks so that you'll be able to listen and participate. All right, take care. Enjoy your Sunday. Have a safe July 4th. Stay blessed.